Hey friends, if you're building an audience or a community or a fan base, it's absolutely critical that you get really dialed in on who that audience is, because you're going to do a whole load of work such as putting out social media or blog content or doing video or podcasting or doing events or building community platforms. And if you're not targeting all of that work to the right person, then you're going to spin your wheels and cost yourself a whole bunch of time, effort, and money. Okay. Now, the good news is that the solution to this problem is to create something called an audience persona. And in this video, we're going to walk step by step through how to do that. And I'm going to make this really easy for you. Firstly, I've created a free audience persona template. It looks a little bit like this. And I'm also going to walk through how this template has been applied with an example. Okay. Now, what you can do is down there in the video description, you can find a link to where you can go and access that template. Just click on it. It's going to pop up a screen. Click on the copy button. It will make a copy of the template, and then you'll be good to go. But before we get into actually building out the template, I just want to talk about whether this work is actually as important as I'm saying it is, right? Because let's be honest, a lot of people, when they talk about how to build businesses or communities or engagement, whatever, they say, go and do this really important thing. You spend a whole bunch of time on it, and then you never look at it again. And you're like, that was a total waste of time, okay? That is not the case when it comes to building an audience persona. And let me explain why. So, over the course of my career, I've worked with probably about 250, 300 different companies. And whenever we work with a new company, one of the first things we want to understand is what are the assets that they've built out to build their audience or their community or their fan base, right? And this could be things like their website, it could be their blog, maybe they've got a Discord channel or another community platform. Maybe they're doing social media. Maybe they're doing some events, right? These are the things they've invested time, effort, and money in building with the goal of building that audience or that fan base or that community. And obviously all of these different things are targeted towards human beings, right? So the success of these assets are really dependent on making sure that the content that they deliver on them are hitting the right people and the right people responding to them. But how do we do this? There's loads of people out there in the world, right? Well, the good news here is that psychologically, we as human beings are attracted to three things in order, right? This has been scientifically proven time and time again. The first is called loss aversion. In other words, there are just some things in life, I can't write. There are some things in life that we're just terrified of losing, right? Losing our family, losing money, losing reputation, losing data, losing access to opportunity. These are the kind of things that we're really fearful of losing, right? And we want to protect ourselves from losing those different things. This is number one, right? More important than anything is loss aversion. It's been scientifically proven that losing $20 is much more annoying to most people than gaining a free $20 bill, for example, right? The second one here is what we call pain resolution. So if you look at everyone's jobs, for example, whatever your job is, there's always going to be things that suck, that are annoying, that are mundane, that are frustrating, that make the job less fun, right? So if we can take that pain away, then we like that, right? And then the third one are gains, right? Things that we dream about, we aspire to, things that we'd like to gain that will be good for us, right? And that can be money, or it could be opportunity, it could be a promotion, whatever it might be. So what we want to do is we want to get super clear on what these things are for our target audience, right? We want to figure out what things they're worried about losing, what their pains are, what things they'd like to gain. And this is what a persona is. And when we're clear on this, then we can better use these assets to target the right things. Okay, that's basically how it works. Now, before as I clean up my mess and before I switch over to the template, I want to be very clear about something as you approach this, because you are now in this moment, in this dangerous part of the journey. And the dangerous part of the journey is that you, one, are going to watch the rest of this video and do nothing, right? And that is the worst thing you can do, because successful people bias themselves towards action. They watch a video like this and then they book an hour on their calendar or half an hour on their calendar, and then they get to work, right? So one danger, Will Robinson, is that you don't do anything. And I'd strongly encourage you not to do that. The second thing is you turn this into an unnecessarily complicated process. Over the years, I've met a ton of marketing people who will spend weeks and months on building out these audience personas, like the audience persona is something that is a demonstration of their prowess as a marketing person. It's like, no, an audience persona is a means to an end, right? The real work is what you do with it, right? So when we go through this template right here, I want you to spend no more than 15 to 30 minutes on this, okay? And you're just gonna literally knock it out, get through it, and then, you know, we're going to talk a little bit later on about what you'll do with it and how you'll test it. You'll test it with people and stuff like that. I'm going to go through this bit by bit, explain how it works. And what I'm going to do to make this easier to understand is I'm going to walk through this with an example, right? So you see that, you know, it's the same structure. This is the template, and then this is the example, right? Now, the first thing you're going to do is you're going to give this persona a name, right? So we're going to call this person Sarah. And the title here, the job title for Sarah is a front-end developer. Now, if you're not a technical person, front-end developer is basically someone who builds websites and builds kind of user interfaces on applications and stuff like that, okay? We're using a tech example here, but you don't have to worry about, you don't have to know anything about tech for this to resonate. So get the title of that person down, and then importantly, note down who they report to. Now, why is this important? Because in many cases, when we're building out personas, they have different roles that they play, right? So Sarah, for example, may be someone who reads your social media, maybe goes to your events, maybe goes on your website. But is Sarah going to be buying your product? Probably not. It's probably her boss is going to be approving the expense to buy your product or your service. So we want to know who that person is, right? And then what we might do is create a persona for them as well. In many cases, you'll have multiple different personas, right? But for now, we're just going to start out with Sarah. So get that down. And then the next thing is the age range. Now, you don't have to obsess over this. Some people get really weird about like these types of, you know, elements of personas such as gender and age and, you know, location and all this kind of stuff. I think it's important to get a broad sense of that. But this is just generally a guiding number to give us a sense of broadly, you know, are we dealing with somebody who is working right now? Or are we dealing with somebody who's in their 90s who's playing bridge at the weekends, right? Like clearly Sarah is somebody who is actively at work, is not retired, right? Locations is what you're going to apply that's relevant to you and your target and your company that you work at, right? So in this example, we're going to assume that the company that's building this persona is not able to do business in Asia. Like if you want to do business, if you're a Western company, you want to be successful in China, for example, you typically need to have staff who live and work in China, and there's a language barrier and there's all kinds of complexities in making that work. So we're just assuming here that our target audience here is based in the USA, the UK, the Europe, or Israel, okay? So this is just some, you know, overview of this person. Now we're starting to get into the meat of it, and this is the description. So channel your inner Stephen King, right? And write the best possible bit of fiction of who this person is, and really paint a beautiful picture of who Sarah is. And don't just talk about all the work stuff, about what Sarah's doing at work. Talk about what drives her, what motivates her, what her relationship with her boss is, right? So let me kind of go through this and give you an example. So Sarah loves building applications, seeing her work impacting users, and learning and using new front-end tech. She's smart, autonomous, and driven, and cares little for bureaucracy or wasting time. She wants to keep growing her skills and wonders if her current gig is doing that for her. She feels her boss doesn't see her full potential. She enjoys fitness, reading, and music outside of work, right? So this provides like a nice little sense of who Sarah is, right? She's this kind of career woman who is smart and intelligent. She doesn't like wading through bureaucracy. Her boss doesn't really get her potential, and she's pretty active outside of work, right? So now we have a bit of a sense of who this persona is. If you're wondering about what to write in here, just come up with something and get it down, right? And then later on, what we're going to do is we're going to get some feedback from some other people, and we'll dial this in, okay? This is just the first draft. Now, needs and aspirations. Do you remember earlier on, we talked about loss aversion, pain resolution, and gains? This is the gains section in action, right? So here, what you want to put in here are the things that Sarah is really aspiring to kind of get to. So maybe she wants to aspire to management, but she really wants to keep her kind of her knees deep into the tech as well. If she's interested in learning about AI, because there's a lot of talk about AI right now. It could be getting paid more money, right? Maybe she's struggling to pay her rent. Building a network, traveling more, maybe going to more conferences and things like that. So now we've got a good sense of kind of who she is. But now we get into the meat of it. And this is where we talk about the losses and the pain points. Now, what I want to do here is I want to kind of explain what this is, because we'll start out with losses, and then, you know, narrow and broad pain points are a really fundamentally important element of how we do this. And I'll explain this in just a second. So the losses are, as I mentioned earlier on, are the things that Sarah really does not want to lose, right? And what I put in here is data loss in the projects that she's working on. She's worried about losing her reputation at work and in the industry if she puts her foot wrong. And she's also worried about losing money. Like, it might be a personal money. It may be, she may be worried about losing money, like maybe it's kind of cloud computing credits, cloud computing costs or something like along those lines, depending on what she's doing. These are the things that she's really worried about, right? But now let's talk about the pain points, right? And I want to provide a bit of context around this. So when we're building any kind of audience, what we want to be is we want to fit into their world and make them think differently about who we are as a company, as a brand, in terms of what we're doing, right? Now, think about it this way. Gosh, I'm gonna try and draw a piggy bank, right? I'm gonna attempt to draw a piggy bank. You know what a piggy bank looks like, and you know this is not gonna look good, okay? So this is the snout. Okay, this is the leg. It's kind of a leg. This is the other leg over here. Then pigs are kind of round, aren't they? And then I guess it's got like an ear, is that right? And this is the hard bit. I don't know. That kind of looks like a pig, right? Quite impressed with that. Oh, okay, we've got a pig. So this is a piggy bank, right? And there's the coin slot over there. And narrow pain points are one type of coin that you put into the piggy bank. So think about it this way. Every time we identify a pain point in our target audience and we fix that pain point, it's like putting a coin into the piggy bank, right? So let's say your audience is struggling with, in this case, Sarah, she's struggling with cross-browser compatibility, getting the thing that she's written to work in multiple different web browsers. And you provide a coin here that solves that particular problem, right? When you provide that solution and she finds it useful, Sarah is the analogy here is Sarah is the pig, right? And you're putting that coin into the piggy bank. Sarah would not like me referring to her as a pig, by the way. But what we're doing is that little piece of value that you've given her, the more of those coins we put in, the more goodwill we build, and the more receptive she becomes to us and our community and our brands and our products and all the rest of it, right? So narrow pain points are pain points that relate specifically to the technical, specific work-related stuff that Sarah's dealing with, right? So if we go back to our example over here, you can see here, it's going to be things like cross-browser compatibility, building in accessibility frameworks, integrating with CI/CD, managing external APIs, browser performance bottlenecks, handling legacy frontend code. If you don't know any of this stuff because you're not a tech person, that's fine. This is all tech mumbo-jumbo that relates to what Sarah is doing, okay? So those are narrow pain points. And what happens when we focus on narrow pain points and we solve them is we provide utility. We're useful to Sarah, and that's awesome. But then you've got broad pain points. And these are all coins as well, but these relate to Sarah as a human being and the struggles that she's facing as a human being in that industry, in what she's doing. So let's say, for example, you know, Sarah is a front-end developer and she works in tech. There's been a lot of tech layoffs recently, and she's nervous about losing her job, right? That's a pain point that she has to deal with. She's got the anxiety of that, right? So let's say you create a piece of content here that provides guidance for how to navigate this kind of like the tumultuous nature of tech right now, where people are losing their jobs, right? Now, another coin goes into the piggy bank, but the thing with broad pain points is you don't just build utility there, you build a bond, right? Sarah feels like she can trust you. You get her, you understand her. You're not just about the tech, you're also about her as well. You're setting her up for success. I'm still so proud of that pig, by the way. So that was, honestly, I was dreading that. So I'm glad that that went well. Anyway, so example of this is these, with these broad pain points could be things like getting stakeholder approvals in the company, working with design teams, anxiety of shipping new releases, reviewing bad code, fear of tech layoffs. These are the things that just relate to doing her job and what, the industry that she tends to operate in, okay? So we want to get those down. Now, the final part of the persona here, which is pretty straightforward, is add in here companies and brands that they love, right? So these are brands and companies that you just feel like Sarah will be into, right? So when I think of front-end developers, I think of GitHub or Anthropic or Olama. This is not just the products they put out, it's the branding, it's that they're cool, they're modern, they're cutting edge, right? Get those down. And then also add in here, what are the preferred communication channels? What are the areas in which Sarah prefers to engage, right? Let's say she prefers Discord and email and Slack, and she doesn't like text messages, and she's not interested in forums, for example. Okay, this also, we'll come back to how we're going to use this a little bit later on, but this is useful in helping us to frame and shape our perception of what Sarah wants. And then finally, we add in some quotes. Again, channel your inner Stephen King. And this is where you write quotes of the kind of things you could imagine Sarah saying. Or if you've met some people who match that persona, in this case, front-end developer, then you add those quotes in here. So if you do some research or you speak to somebody and they share some quotes with you, put them in here as well. So Sarah could say, I love writing code, but everything around it drains the energy from me, such as writing tests, writing docs, and more. Excuse me. It's mind-bending how many new technologies are out there, and I struggle to stay up to date and keep my skills sharp. Okay? So when you add all of this stuff in here, what you end up with is a really comprehensive persona, right? So what are we gonna use this for? And again, I'm gonna kind of clear my mess up here. Well, fundamentally what you're gonna use this for is you're gonna use this to evaluate how to navigate those assets and what you're gonna do next in terms of your social media, your video, your podcasting, your content, your events, everything, okay? And what you're gonna do is we're gonna break this down into 5 steps, okay? The first step is you're going to go and create a persona. Now, again, this should take no longer than 15 to 30 minutes. Okay? Get it done, get it down. Just start typing. Don't worry about fixing typos. Just get it done. Then go back and edit it until you feel happy with it. Literally set a clock. Or block off half an hour in your calendar and go get it done. Then what you're gonna do is you're gonna get some feedback, right? Share it with your colleagues, people you work with, and say, I put this persona together, and this is the key thing you wanna say to them, is I want you to tell me how it can be improved. You need to give them permission to be critical. If you don't do that, then they'll just give you a load of platitudes and, oh yeah, it looks really good. We don't want that. We want them to tell us how it can be improved, okay? That's really, really critically important. The next step then is you lock it in and you say, okay, now we consider this persona to be completed. And then what you're gonna do is you're gonna test it. And this is the important piece, right? And this is where you can test it on social, on your blog. You could put content out in your Discord, as I mentioned earlier on, or your other community platform. You could maybe do an event around it. I would recommend you focus on social media to test it. And what do I mean by testing it? Well, let's look at the example of going back to Sarah, okay? So let's pick one of these losses or pain points, and let's pick a loss first of all. So let's say we identify, okay, Sarah's worried about losing data, right? So you could create, let's say, a simple social media post or a series of social media posts of these are the 5 most common ways in which data is lost for front-end web developers, or front-end developers, and here's how to solve them. go and create that social media content, put it out there, and then judge it on how many likes or responses or shares does it get. Maybe you go and create a blog post. And let's pick another thing, cross-browser compatibility. Oh, cross-browser compatibility is a massive pain, right? So you go and create a blog post. You could even create it with ChatGPT if you want. Go put something together, super practical. And remember the other elements of the of what you've got here. Look at the age range. Sarah is going to want to read something that's really accessible. It's not going to sound too kind of young and kiddie-ish. It's not going to, shouldn't sound like an old fogey kind of wrote it. It's got to be in that kind of age range, right? She's driven, she's interested, she likes practical content, right? So make sure that you write it in that capacity. Then maybe test something else. Maybe, you know, one of the challenges here is reviewing bad code and being fearful of offending people when she's providing feedback and code that's not very good. Maybe you write another blog post or a social media series, or maybe put together a video where you kind of walk through how to do that. The point is that we keep dipping back into the persona to start playing around with these ideas that we then go out and we test as we go through this, okay? And then what you do is, you know, as you test these different things, is you look at the data. What does the data tell you? How many likes, how many replies, how many impressions did it get in some cases? And where you see different things working and not working, the final step is you iterate. You go back to your persona, and you say, okay, well, maybe we should add in some different types of broad pain points. Oh, well, we did this thing around reviewing bad code and it worked really well. Let's look at some of the other kind of interpersonal dynamics in companies and come up with some ideas, and you start adding them in here. And now what we're doing is we're expanding. Maybe there's some things that you tested that didn't work. Let's say you did the cross-browser compatibility content and nobody seemed to pay any attention to it. And maybe you tested an accessibility frameworks one, and you're like, well, maybe people don't care as much about those more narrow technical issues and they're more interested in the broad pain points. That's how we kind of focus on doing it, okay? Now, we've covered a lot in this little workshop video. But again, I just want to go back to what I said earlier on. Progress over perfection. Just get started. It's just about getting up and running. That's the most important thing to do, okay? Now, one of the most challenging things when we build any kind of audience or fan base or community is doing social media. We talked about it literally kind of over here, right? And if you're struggling to come up with like cool ideas for social media, I want you to go and check out this video next. This is the approach that we use, we work with our customers on, where you can come up with a month's worth of social media in literally like 2 to 3 hours. It doesn't take a lot of time, but it's a very specific approach that you got to go through to make sure that it's effective. So go check out that video and I'll see you there.